Many people, Professor, think you are the most intelligent human being in the world. Do you agree?
I would never claim this. People who boast about their IQ are losers.
Hello, everyone. This, as always, is your friendly neighborhood astrologer, Matthew Curry. I'm glad you could drop by for today's show. Later on, we'll be talking to comedian Ann Gora, having a look at her birth chart and uncovering a bit of a surprise there. I hope you stick around for it. But first, we're going to start with a look at Mars in Capricorn. Mars entered Capricorn on the 17th, and as many of you may already know, Capricorn is the sign of Mars's exaltation. In other words, in theory, Mars in Capricorn is where Mars does its best work. And Mars rules lots of fun stuff and some awkward things: sex, violence, anger, building muscle tissue, cutting things, heating things. Basically, you couldn't get through life without much Mars, and come to think of it, life couldn't get started without Mars. So there's no reason to be afraid of it just because it's the god of war. But all gods of war should be respected a little, and part of respecting them is understanding the rules they work by. So here's the rundown on some of the major aspects that Mars will be forming as it passes through Capricorn, and there are two of these you are going to really want to pay attention to. They are very important for two very different reasons, alright? And by the way, I'll be giving you the exact dates that these aspects will be happening on, but make sure that you add somewhere around 3 to 5 days before and after, because the aspect doesn't have to be exact to have an effect. First off, on March 24th, we will have Sun in Aries square Mars in Capricorn. Now, this is going to be an interesting situation because whenever you see Sun square Mars, it indicates, that there's going to be a lot of energy out there, and I'm being optimistic when I call it energy. It's going to be a difficult time for some of you. Some egos are going to get bruised, people are going to overdo it, they're going to pull some muscles. And this Sun square Mars is going to be a particularly tricky one because Sun in Aries is a very strong placement, and as we've already established, Mars in Capricorn is a very strong placement. So make sure you do your warm-up stretches before you work out, bend from the knees when you're lifting things, and don't argue with your boss, okay? Just be careful with your ego and others in general. Next up on April 2nd is another potentially difficult to deal with aspect when Mars is going to be conjunct Saturn in Capricorn. Again, kind of like Mars conjunct Saturn is a bit like Sun square Mars in that the energy can be kind of difficult to deal with, but believe it or not, even though Saturn is involved, it's actually not that bad an aspect. It's good and constructive. It's a good time to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work that needs to be done with whatever needs some fixing in your life, whether it's the spice rack or your relationship. And some people get a little worried when they hear about Mars, and they get a lot more worried when they hear about Saturn. Don't. They're both necessary, they're both useful, and let's be honest here, Saturn may be scary sometimes, but it's not as scary as Pluto. Oh, by the way, there's some Pluto action coming up too, so brace yourself for that. On April 4th, we have Mars square Mercury. That's going to be kind of funky for two reasons. First of all, it tends to be a time when people misspeak. They beak off at someone they shouldn't. It can be a time when your thought processes are a little too hasty, you're not quite thinking things through. And on top of it, oh what fun, Mercury is retrograde. So just remember, when Mercury is square Mars, make sure you carefully proofread that note before you wrap it around the brick and throw it through your neighbor's window. And then, just to be safe, don't throw it through your neighbor's window. Now, if you'll recall, a couple of minutes ago I said that there were going to be two Mars aspects happening that you really should pay close attention to, and here comes the first of them. On April 11th, Venus in Taurus, a very strong placement, is going to be trine Mars in Capricorn. Now, normally when you're looking at a birth chart or transits and you see Venus trine Mars, there's usually something to be said about the sex drive. And that's certainly true. Odds are good that you're going to be a little more amped up than usual that way, and you know what to do about that. But in a broader sense, Venus trine Mars is very sociable, it's very cheerful, it's very outgoing. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a lightweight aspect, except this time around, it's all happening still when Venus is within trine range of Saturn. So, in fact, it'll be really good, but it'll also be really potentially very constructive for you. So, if you're in a relationship, think of it this way: take your partner, treat them like you're having a hot one night stand, and then promise to be better to them and kinder to them over the long run. Or, you know what, throw a party for someone, or cheer someone up who needs it, you know? Venus trine Mars is just generally a really good buzz, and I'd hate to see it go to waste. And the good news keeps coming, because on April 14th, while Venus trine Mars is still in effect, we get Mars trine Neptune. In some ways, Neptune, rather, is almost like a Venus. It's kind of a higher-minded Venus, if you will. It also has a lot to do with spirituality, prayer, meditation, paying attention to your dreams, both literal and figurative dreams. And a sextile from Mars gives you a chance to actually make some of those things come true or work better for you. It's also a really good time for laying on the charm with someone. Be careful, though. If someone is trying to sell you something that you don't really want or really need, because there's something about a Mars-Neptune aspect that's really charismatic. On the other hand, if you yourself are in sales, get ready to charm your way into some great commissions. After that, we get a bit of a break from major Mars activity, at least for a little while, specifically until the 24th, when we have Mars sextile Jupiter. Good for energy levels, good for partying, good for having a good time. Generally, a lot of boisterous fun comes along with Mars sextile Jupiter. And then comes April 26th. Not just April 26th, but let's say 3 to 5 days before that, 3 to 5 days after it. And this is the other major Mars news that I want you to pay attention to. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you a bit of a homework assignment to go with this. Trust me, remember this, write it down somewhere, wake the neighbors, this is important. On the 26th, Mars conjunct Pluto. Now, this is important for two very special reasons. First of all, any Mars-Pluto aspect is going to really amplify Mars. Mars, Pluto, they have a very similar nature, and when they get together, amazing things can happen. Potentially dangerous if you mishandle that energy, but it also can be very useful, very constructive. If there's something in your life that needs to have a sledgehammer taken to it, now is the time. But that's not the only reason why this Mars-Pluto conjunction is special and worth noting. On July 12th of this year, there is going to be a solar eclipse at 20 degrees Cancer. Now that's exactly opposite where the upcoming Mars-Pluto conjunction is happening. So that right there, what happens during the Mars-Pluto conjunction, will give you some kind of clue as to what's likely to manifest in your life because of that upcoming eclipse. But that's not all. Here's the big exciting news, is that at the tail end of 2019, 2020, there is going to be, get this, a Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening right where the Mars-Pluto conjunction is happening now. If you've been paying attention to what's been going on in your life in the last couple of years, while Pluto has been hovering around roughly 20 degrees Capricorn, for many of you, there will have been spectacularly good things happen. For some of you, maybe spectacularly not good things happening. Pluto is a really slow planet. And whatever Pluto has been doing for you or to you in the last couple of years, that is going to be hitting some really dramatic peaks. First of all, because of that eclipse this year in July. But more importantly, perhaps more importantly, because of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that's going to be happening, like I said, tail end of 2019, early 2020. So please pay very close attention to what happens in your life around the time that this Mars-Pluto conjunction happens, because you could be getting a very exciting and very useful sneak preview of the effects of that eclipse and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And believe me, you'll be hearing a lot more about that Saturn-Pluto conjunction as it approaches. I keep telling people not to panic over it, okay? This is going to be a very useful and powerful time, and it may not hurt nearly as much as you might think, despite the fact that when you get right down to it, a lot of astrologers, a lot of astrology fans, when they hear Saturn-Pluto conjunction, they think it's kind of like King Kong versus Godzilla. And of course, the trick to being in King Kong versus Godzilla is do not be Tokyo. Finally, on May 16th, Mars enters Aquarius, but there's something you need to pay attention to here, is that for a few days before that, even though Mars is going to still be in Capricorn, it is going to be trine Uranus, which by that point will have just freshly entered Taurus. And Mars trine Uranus is great for your energy levels, great for shaking things up, great for approaching things in new and creative ways, and yes, also, we'll be talking all about Uranus in Taurus in future. Don't worry, we'll get to that too. I got you covered. Coming up in a minute, my interview with comedian Ann Gora, but first, a word from our sponsor. Hi, I'm astrologer Matthew Curry. When I say I'm an astrologer, most people don't really know what the job entails and what I can do for you. Let me tell you a little about it. I'm a counselor. Much like a regular counselor, you'd see if there was a problem with your love life or your finances or your health or your family. And in many ways, it's exactly that straightforward.
Cymbalta can help. Cymbalta is a prescription medication that treats many symptoms of depression.
Actually, that's one of the great things as far as I'm concerned about astrology, is that although it's a very ancient science, it's very up to date and with relatively few side effects.
Antidepressants can increase these in children, teens, and young adults. Cymbalta is not approved for children under 18.
Well, regardless of your age, living in the modern world can be difficult. And believe it or not, talking to an astrologer can actually help sort things out in a better and more practical way than, honestly, anything else I can think of.
People taking MAOIs or thyroidazine or with uncontrolled glaucoma should not take Cymbalta. Taking it with NSAID pain relievers, aspirin, or blood thinners may increase bleeding risk.
But really, more than anything else, the great thing about astrology is that it's not really about stars and about planets. It's about you and your life and the people you interact with and the things that make you happy. And that, more than anything else, is the real gift that astrology...
Severe liver problems, some fatal, were reported. Signs include abdominal pain and yellowing of the skin or eyes.
Okay, look, straight up. Astrology. It works, it's non-prescription, it's a way for you to take charge of your life. Now, are there any questions?
Talk with your doctor about your medicines, including those for migraine, or if you have high fever, confusion, and stiff muscles, to address a possible life-threatening condition.
So send me an email. The address is astrologyshow@gmail.com, and I'll send you more information and, hey, maybe some free stuff.
Dizziness or fainting may occur upon standing.
So send me an email and I'll tell you more. No obligation and no side effects.
Side effects include nausea, dry mouth, and constipation.
Oh, just send me that email. I'll send you some information. Just take my word for it. It'll be good.
To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help for an erection lasting more than 4 hours.
Not that good. Okay, I'm not going to be running that thing every week, don't panic. I'll come up with some new shtick soon. Anyway, write me. The email address is astrologyshow@gmail.com. I can send you information on readings. And you know what? I got a free ebook for you. That's right, my ebook, 12 Signs of Love, absolutely free. Just send me an email and you get it. The email address again is astrologyshow@gmail.com. Now, for those of you who've listened to a lot of astrology podcasts in your time, you know that there's a lot of them out there where you have an astrologer hosts the show, and then they have a guest on, and usually that guest is another astrologer. I'm hoping to mix that format up a little. I will be having astrologers on here on occasion. But what I'm doing here with this podcast is that more often than not, I'm going to have to try to have someone on other than an astrologer, because I love astrologers, okay? Well, some of them. Most of them are pretty good people. But, you know, I want to show people through this podcast what astrology can do for you or for other people. And this means I'm going to be talking to a lot of very interesting people who aren't necessarily astrologers at all. Case in point, my first guest on the new podcast, Ann Gora, A-N-N space G-O-R-A. You're going to want to look that up. Ann Gora is a comedian, writer, and podcaster from Nashua, New Hampshire. The creator and former longtime MC of Albuquerque's prolific Vagrant Variety, she's also been featured in Tourette's Without Regrets, Meow Wolf's Lulz Comedy Showcase, and others. Her current work is as a writer and correspondent for New Mexico's own news satire show, The NM Inquisition. She also hosts a bi-monthly podcast, Albu Crazy. Look that up, Albu Crazy. She's open for Dave Ross, Moshe Kasher, Natasha Leggero, and Cameron Esposito. She lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico with her dead mother and blind dog, where she tweets furiously all day as @Angora. Ladies and gentlemen of all species, please welcome my guest, Ann Gora. Hello, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I've got a podcast now. Did I mention that?
I heard somewhere.
Word is slowly getting out, very slowly, so please tell a friend. Just wanted to, I've known you in the internet sense for a long time. I don't know if you're old enough to remember when people would refer to knowing someone in the biblical sense as having had sex with them.
I do know that.
I'm beginning to think, I'm not applying this to you, but in a lot of ways, knowing someone in the internet sense means I got into an argument over politics with them once. But
yeah, I mean, it starts to turn that way. But I was thinking about it, and it's been about a decade that you and I have known each other on the internet.
Oh my God. And we haven't argued once. Let's see if we can do something about that.
All right.
So, having a look at your chart, there's a few things because, first of all, looking at someone else's chart is entertaining and educational. And it also makes for a great way to talk about other people's problems rather than your own. You know your astrology reasonably well, right?
Yeah.
And you've noticed by now that you are, in fact, a Capricorn.
I've found that out.
As a matter of fact, Capricorn with Capricorn rising, which would give you excellent bone structure. So
It does. I got great teeth.
Congratulations on that. That's absolutely awesome. There's some things I wanted to ask you about, though, based on your birth chart. I guess a lot of people going by, well, okay, you're a comedian. You're funny. You make people laugh. And you're a comedian because you do it deliberately.
Yes.
But now here's the thing. I'm sure that you've read around about kind of these stereotypes about Capricorn. And you know what I mean. They're supposed to be a complete stiff, and you aren't. Have you ever wondered about that?
A little bit.
Okay. And, just looking over your chart here, look, first of all, I mean, that's a terrible cliche. It's like saying, I don't know, all Lithuanians are devious. I made that up. I don't know any Lithuanians, okay? But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
no wonder you get into fights on the internet.
Oh, my God.
Lithuanians.
Stop me before I Lithuanian again. But as far as just general communications, expressing yourself, and certainly doing comedy, that's certainly expressing yourself. Usually we kind of look at Mercury, and nice Mercury, by the way. But when we combine that with your third house, and by the way, the new moon on the day we're recording this fell in your third house. So I guess this means you're going to be spending a lot of time talking in the next month and communicating. And look, here you are on a podcast.
Definitely.
And but your third house is ruled by Neptune, and that has a lot of. I got to ask you, was there anything unusual about your early speech development?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And the way you express yourself, I mean, through comedy, I mean, Neptune has a lot of association with entertainment, that sort of thing, and you are highly entertaining.
Thank you. I am going to say this, though, because I'm trying to think about my early speech development. My early communications in the world were not always exactly speech.
Okay.
I began writing at a young age.
Ah.
And escaping and writing at a young age.
That's interesting. Neptune brings some unusual gifts.
Definitely.
Of course, though, it's not all fun and games. For example, well, okay, when we're talking about you, being a comedian, we also have to look at the midheaven, your personal calling in life, that sort of thing. In your case, it's in Scorpio. I've noticed you take your work very seriously.
Yes.
And it's kind of, I think anyone who's done comedy knows how hard it is, and people who have watched comedy maybe don't realize how much damn work goes into it.
This is very true.
So, I'm certainly hoping that, you tell everyone how much work you put into it, so they better laugh. Try that sometime.
I demand it.
Yeah. Also, though, this is kind of interesting. Since your midheaven's ruled by Pluto,
Mm-hmm.
and what's really interesting about this is that Pluto is behind your midheaven instead of on your midheaven. I mean, by most house systems, you would have Pluto somewhere in around your 10th house, but not necessarily in your 10th house. It would be, in most cases, like your 9th. That kind of implies that there's sort of a philosophical bent to your work, whatever it is you end up doing.
Yes, definitely.
And I'm just kind of curious here. I by the time this goes up, I'll have posted a couple of links to your work, and people will laugh, and some will be shocked. Some will clutch their pearls in horror, I'm sure. But when did you decide this is what you wanted to be when you grow up?
I guess I've always kind of dabbled in comedy since high school, but I decided to take it really seriously in like 2010.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that's kind of when I got really super serious about it.
All right. So, and here's the thing. I don't know how much people, I'm certainly hoping that people run around and research your stuff after this. Because, you know what, we're going to tell them to do that. That's what we're going to do. I don't know, we're always a little awkward getting into one's personal background when we're talking in public, and one should be very careful about that, okay? You mentioned your high school years, and here's the thing. During your high school years, Saturn would have been passing through your 6th house. This rules health. Are there any stories from there we want to talk about?
Oh, absolutely. I had a lymphoma. I had cancer in high school.
Ah, yeah. See, I knew that already. I knew that, but still.
Yeah.
And how are you doing now?
I'm cancer free, but I still have health issues.
Okay, do we want to talk about that?
We can talk about them.
Okay. Tell us what's going on. I should, before we get into it, I will mention that your 6th house is ruled by Mercury, and that Mercury is in a square to Pluto. So we kind of have to assume from that health-wise it might be, if I was a different astrologer, I would be saying there's certain karmas to work out there. But I'm not that kind of guy. So what's happening?
I have muscle and neurological issues.
Okay.
So I have muscle cramp, spasm, and general weakness, and I have really bad neurological issues with numbness, pain, shooting pains, all kinds of different things.
Okay. Has this been given like a specific diagnosis, or does anyone know what to call it? I don't know if that always helps, but does anyone know what to call it?
They call it polyneuropathy.
And if I remember my Latin correctly, that translates as a bunch of stuff going on wrong with your nerves.
Yeah.
Oh, well, God, I love science, don't you?
Yeah, but I do feel it's kind of modern that I have polyneuropathy. Because if I had, mononeuropathy, it'd be old-fashioned.
Okay. Well, you know what? And here's the thing. Sometimes astrology makes predictions, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, they actually work out to be true. I have a rather bold one for you. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
there's a fix for this in about 5 years when transiting Pluto is finished passing over your Mercury and finishing the square to your natal Pluto. Are you shocked?
That sounds excellent.
You know what? Here's the thing. I'm planting my flag on this one because I thought about this very carefully before I called you about this. I wanted to make sure, because, the only thing that's worse than providing someone with any kind of false hope is providing them with false hope and being wrong about a prediction in public. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I've gone over this. I could bore you to death with the technical details, but I won't. Oh, by the way, if anyone wants to hear the technical details about their chart, they should call me for a reading. Oh, wait, sorry, this is not the time for self-promotion, is it? Sorry. But I just wanted you to know that. I wanted to get it out. I want to tell you, it's in the birth chart. It looks like this is when the health problems really kicked in. We're during the teen years, but everything's going to be just fine. All right?
That sounds amazing, and
So,
because especially I've started to believe that for some reason that this was going to just be forever, and so even if you say that, I'm going to trust it and get really excited for it.
oh God, now the pressure's on, isn't it?
Don't worry about it. I got a lot of stuff to do until then. I'm good at packing a lot of work into 5 years. You know that.
Oh yeah, that, and you know what? I mean, there's a lot of dodgy ethical considerations around predicting death. There are techniques that can be done. It's a lot of work. You got to charge extra for it. But I'll tell you this much: you appear to have an excellent lifespan on you.
Excellent.
That is good news, right?
That is actually surprising news, actually.
Life is full of surprises, isn't it?
I know.
So you know what? Now that we've gotten the morbid stuff out of the way, what do you want to tell us about you and your work? What do you want us to know about you?
I'm a comedian, and I'm a head writer of a local news satire show. So I do. I pretty much stick to the Capricorn side of comedy.
Yeah.
Dark and politics and, just those things in general. So they're enjoyable. And I put a lot of my work, I have some sets on YouTube. You just put in Angora comedy. Or I personally ask people to always show up on my Twitter at symbol Angora. That's usually where you get the most updates.
Yeah. And here, to me, when it comes to the Capricorn approach to comedy, I think from my perspective, this is probably the most important thing. How do people pay you for the laughs? Do you do live shows? Can we buy your T-shirt somewhere? Anything like that?
Usually, like when people, I usually just stick to getting paid for shows. I usually just ask people to come out or follow my projects and pay into them. Like we have money associated with the satire TV show. That, needs all the love, money-wise that we can get. And, as far as other things go, I travel and I make a little bit of money when I travel. So, I mean, really it's, so I would say put money into, New Mexico Inquisition. That's the best way.
And you see, here's the thing. With astrology, we always end up back at the cliches somehow, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I'm a Sagittarius, so I just can't keep my mouth shut about it. See how that works?
Yeah.
So any shows coming up or anything we should know about?
No, not for the internet to worry about or see. I will say this, though. Just follow me on Twitter.
Okay.
I'll try and make you laugh, and I'll bug the crap out of you, too.
Right on. And just one more thing I want to mention is that, with all the Capricorn in your chart, and by the way, I noticed other stuff like a very nice Moon-Venus conjunction in Aquarius. All good news, right?
Yeah.
One more thing I want to mention, though, to you, To anyone else who is a Capricorn, has some prominent placements there. If you're up on astrology and if you're reading a lot of blogs, you probably, well, whenever Saturn changes signs, someone always panics, okay? To you and to anyone else with Capricorn rising out there, I want you to keep in mind that although Saturn is passing through your sign now, in fact, think of it this way, the ruler of your first house is passing through your first house, and what this translates into is 2.5 years of potential awesomeness.
Yeah.
And I think in the next couple of years you're going to be making a real impact, and it's going to be just a really, overall, I think it's going to be a damn good time for you.
Well, that's great to hear, yeah.
Although, of course, I mean, it's a golden rule of astrology and life itself, is that, if you stick around long enough, eventually something crappy will happen. But what I'm saying here is that overall the next couple of years ought to be pretty good for you.
That's great.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to that, too. I already feel like things are starting to, in small ways, I think that I feel very fortunate right now.
Yeah. And, I think there's just generally a lot of good times coming for you. Although, of course, I will warn you that when Mars is passing over your ascendant in late April, careful with tripping over stuff, okay?
Okay, I'll have all my knives locked up.
Right on. I know. I don't go anywhere without my pocket scissors, personally, but when that transit hits, I try to be careful with them. So, hey, it was good talking to you.
It was great talking to you.
Let's make
Thank
a date
you.
of this and do it every decade, or however long.
Yeah, I'll be calling you in 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I expect you to come running in 5 years. See how that works?
Well, I definitely will do that. I'll flash up my Fitbit and run over to you.
Rockin'. It was good talking to you.
It was good talking to you too, Matt.
Wasn't that great? Anyway, everyone check out Angora on Twitter. Now, next week, very special program. It's so special, I'm afraid to tell you about it. So you know what? Send me an email, astrologyshow@gmail.com. I'll give you information on readings and send you the free ebook. Keep an eye on my Facebook page. Keep an eye on me at Twitter, where I am at Matthew Curry. And once everything is signed, sealed, and delivered with next week's scheduled guest, then I'm going to announce who it is. But it's so big. The guest is so big. Not physically large, a big name. I'm really looking forward to it. Keep an eye on my page, keep an eye on my Twitter. I will tell you all about it closer to the date that it happens. And in the meantime, as always, I'm Matthew Curry, your friendly neighborhood astrologer. Whoever you are, whatever sign you are, always keep in mind, good night, Susan. I love you.